Dr. Raymond Dunn,
I'm Dr. Marvin Dunn.
and we welcome you to our new season, episode 2 of Through Black Eyes Unfiltered. Bruh, talk to me about Rosewood. What's going on?
Well, let's begin by letting folks who may not know the Rosewood story know what happened.
Oh,
And then
good.
talk about
Start
what's going
there.
on now. But Ray, after the Civil War, a lumber company called the Lumber Company moved into that area, Rosewood. And Rosewood is 40 miles, about 40 miles due west of Gainesville,
Okay.
about 9 miles before you get to the Gulf of Mexico.
Wait a minute. You mean there's no.
No, no, no!
Gulf of America?
Don't test me. I'm trying to tell you something.
All right.
Uh, 9 miles beyond Rosewood, you hit the Gulf, and this was an area where these incredible rosewood trees grew. Rosewood trees are like cypress; they like watery conditions, so they grew very, very well along that part of the Florida coast.
Okay.
And rosewood trees produce extremely fine wood for furniture. Also, I would add, 90% of the pencils in Florida were harvested from rosewood trees in Rosewood, Florida.
That is interesting.
So this was a very, very profitable lumbering adventure in that part of the state, and it drew a lot of white and black people to that area. Uh, that was called Rosewood, which was white and black.
Mhm.
When the rosewood trees were harvested out, timbered out,
Mhm.
the lumber company moved to an area near Tampa, and most of the white people moved as well. But the
Okay.
black folks stayed. A lot of the black people stayed in Rosewood, and Rosewood became an all-black town, with the exception of one family, one white family that we'll talk about. So by the time you get into the 1920s, Rosewood was a very profitable town. Many black people had leased land that the white folks had owned or purchased it from them,
Mhm.
and it was a thriving town. It wasn't Tulsa.
Mhm.
And then in 1923, in January, a white woman named Fannie Taylor, who lived 2 miles from Rosewood, going towards the Gulf,
Mhm.
in a little town called Sumner. This woman, Fannie Taylor, a white woman who was married, was carrying on with a white boyfriend who worked on the train that connected Gainesville and Rosewood. This train came through once a day. This man and the woman was married. The husband worked in the sawmill. He was out of the house early. And this woman had an affair with this man that was ongoing. And one morning they got into a fight. He beat her up. And she had to have some reason to explain to her husband and neighbors why she was beaten up.
Okay.
And she made up the lie that a black man had assaulted her. And that brought the mob looking for this black assailant who really was alive. A white man had done it. But the town was burned down. We're not quite sure how many people died. At least 6 on the record died, and then everybody left. So Rosewood was abandoned. Part of the story is that one white family that was left, one family that was white, the J.W. Wright family,
Mhm.
Mr. Wright and his wife Mary Wright, they ran the general store in Rosewood. And when this happened, they allowed some of the black people to come into their house at night and hide from the mob. Women only, no boys over 13. And it was very, very cold when this happened, right? So they were giving shelter to people who were absolutely out there in their night clothes because the mob came through in the middle of the night. People didn't know what was going on. They just
Oh,
ran out of the house.
what time of year is this now?
January. Very, very.
Wow.
Some people say that it was the coldest winter that was on memory. So when the mob came through, people just ran out of their homes in the middle of the night in their night clothes, and you had kids trying to take care of kids out in these woods. People got separated. No telling where their family members went. The J.W. Wright house that had been used to protect some people. It wasn't burned, Ray, because it was white owned. People knew Mr. Wright. There's no reason to burn his house down. And during the daytime, he made the people leave the house because the mob might spot them. But at night, they would bring them in. Mrs. Wright would cook a pot of greens and grits or something to feed the people. And then back in the daytime, they had to go back outside so they wouldn't get spotted. And the Wright house was right by the railroad track, ran right behind the Wright property. And the railroad depot was right behind the Wright property.
Mhm.
So one night they had a train sneak in at night, and they used a lantern to attract people out of the woods to come and get on the train to be taken to safety. So some people escaped the massacre on that train, brought in by 2 brothers, the Bryce brothers, white men, who were the conductors on that train that came in at risk to these men and the train, but they did that. So some people got saved that way, and all the black people left, and the town was burned down, and that was it. And no black people lived in Rosewood. No black people live there now. And a few years ago, I purchased some property there. We'll talk about that later. But right now, I own 5 acres of land in Rosewood that is right behind the Wright property, which is why I bring it up now.
Okay.
So my property and the J.W. Wright property abut each other with the railroad track running between our properties.
All right.
So
And that's the original railroad track that the train used to get those people from Rosewood to Gainesville for safety.
the Seaboard Airline Railway runs right through that property.
Okay.
So anyway, the J.W. Wright property is 36 acres of very, very valuable land. And as it turns out, the owner of that property, who I have come to know, is willing to sell it historical to save it for history.
Mhm.
And he's asked for $2 million for the property, includes this historic home, and also a home that he built on the property as
Right.
well. That's included in this 36-acre package that is being discussed right now. Well, a couple of years ago, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who represents Broward County, don't tell you who she'll represent once they get through turning around the congressional representation lines of congressional representation. But she represents now Broward County, and she and I had a meeting at her request. We discussed some things, including this land.
Okay.
And Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz put $2 million in the federal budget as an earmark for this land to be purchased and saved for history. And the way the federal law that applies to this works is the land has to be given to a state, a county, a city, or a university.
Okay.
And I was able to convince the mayor of Miami-Dade County, Daniel Levine Coffin, to accept this land for Dade County if they earmarked the $2 million was to be awarded to Dade County for the purpose of having this land.
Mhm.
And as it turns out, we've been at this for 2 years. The first year was kicked out of the budget, a Doge or whatever, they kicked it out. And Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz put it right back in the current budget.
Good for her.
The big, ugly, terrible, ugly thing. This $2 million for that land is in that budget. And we think it's going to be awarded. We think it's going to come down to Miami-Dade County. And Miami-Dade County will become the owners of 36 acres of Rosewood land, inclusive of that historic home that we're going to turn into a park that will preserve forever the Rosewood story. So that's what I have in mind. And then my property right behind it, hopefully, will be a part of this because we could make both the 36 acres that the county will be acquiring and the land that I own a unified presentation for a park going forward.
Now, how much support are you getting from the Dade County mayor and commissioners?
The mayor has been very open to this. The mayor has been active with us. Her office has been and doing all the requirements for obtaining the property from the federal government. But the Miami-Dade County Commission must vote on this. All 13 members of that commission must be approached. I have to meet with each of them and convince them that this, at least a majority of them, that this is something that Miami-Dade County should do. And I plan to do that. And I plan to tell them that if Miami-Dade County agrees to just own the land, anything else beyond that, my own nonprofit efforts will take care of making this into a park. In other words, Miami-Dade County would not have any ongoing financial obligations on their property except to own it. And I'm hoping that will be the case.
So if you're going to accept that responsibility, then I must ask you, are you applying for additional grants or do you have anything in the works to come in to help pay for those obligations?
Yes, we do.
Like what?
You know, the Mellon Foundation has been supporting my work for the last 2 years.
I know about
The
that. They're
truth
very
tours.
good.
They've been very, very helpful in things that I'm doing. And we are now engaged. My Center for Racial Justice is involved with the Mellon Foundation in preliminary discussions about the acquisition of the property and the preservation of the house. So I think that the Mellon Foundation will be helpful. Nothing promised, but we're discussing it. Plus, we are going to approach many other sources of support for grants. Ray, that house is valuable. That house is 103 years old, but it's a very the Wrights were wealthy. That's a very well built house, well appointed house.
Yeah.
But we need to save it. We've taken some steps already to try to make sure the house is preserved. For example, I had a team of archaeologists
Okay.
come up and preservationists come up.
Mhm.
We've measured by laser every inch of that house, every inch. If it burned down tomorrow, we could rebuild it. We did that first. We've already done that,
Mm-hmm.
just in case a fire accidentally starts and the house is lost. We can rebuild it.
You can rebuild it to its original.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know this, Ray, but there was a black family in Rosewood in the 1970s that owned land, owned a home in Rosewood. Yeah, I didn't know that until recently.
Oh yeah.
There's a black couple that owned land. This gentleman was a military retiree or a police. I think that he was a military retiree who purchased land out there where my property is.
Okay.
It's all rural out
Yeah,
there.
I know. And 5 acres, basically the minimum size you could buy is 5
Exactly.
acres.
All the land, all
Okay.
the land out there is 5 acres. But this gentleman owned this land for about a year or so. And one day he and his wife came back from shopping and the house was burned down. And when the fire department was called, they didn't come. So I was told.
Mm.
So this couple's house, the last black family that lived in Rosewood back in the 1970s, I think it was mid-70s, they got burned out. Because people need to know about Rosewood. Rosewood is a place where a lot of suffering took place. And Rosewood is a place where the black people got help from some of the white people.
Mhm.
And Ray, in trying to tell this story and other stories about racial violence in Florida, I try to be fair about the history of it. All the white folks who were in Rosewood at the time, who lived there, who came to Rosewood, let me back up. All the white folks who lived in Levy County, who lived in that area, were not members of the mob, were not KKK people, attacked black people. And one of the unfortunate aspects of the Rosewood story, and I've gotten this from my neighbors, white folks in Rosewood, is that we didn't tell the whole story. Of course, we told the story about the black folks that got killed and burned out and all of that. But as I've sat and talked with a few of my neighbors, some of them didn't even know the Rosewood story until recently. But some of the folks who were around a long time, whose families were there back when this happened, told me, "You historians were not fair. My grandpa took a gun and kept the mob from coming into his section of Sumner, the town where some black folks lived who worked in that sawmill." So I've tried to tell the stories in ways that reflect the violence, the suffering, but also the instances in which some white people, certainly not enough, came forward and did the right thing at the right time, like J.W. Wright and his wife did in Rosewood. They died they were ostracized.
Yeah. I know.
After it was all over, the white folks had nothing to do with the rights. And that's why I take my tours, when I take students on these tours called Teach the Truth tours to these places where these things have happened, we always go to the rights grave.
But you also showed us some evidence of the kind of closeness that some whites had with blacks, because when some blacks were buried, don't you have a picture showing where there were whites standing around in a cemetery, and you think that maybe is that how would you explain that? Because you said to a group was that some of the black people who were killed and buried worked for whites, and the whites mourned their death. And I thought I heard you say that.
Well, not exactly.
Okay,
Not exactly.
how did it go?
I found a photograph
Mm-hmm.
that was taken in the white cemetery in Sumner, 2 miles from Rosewood.
That's what I'm talking about. That's the picture. Yeah.
And it showed a group of white people, about 30 white people, in Sunday clothes, some of them holding babes in their arms, no black people, standing around 3 open graves.
Mhm.
And the caption said, "The 6 victims of the Rosewood incident being buried two to a grave in the shallow cemetery in Sumner."
Mm-hmm.
And this photograph shows these white people standing around, no, as I said, no black people. And I believe that that is, in fact, the burial site for these 6 black people, but it's not in Rosewood. It's in Sumner. It's in the Shallow Cemetery, a white cemetery in Sumner, and Ray, it's in the back of the cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some folks from the North may never.
Tell us about that.
In the South, they didn't bury white folks and black people in the same section of a cemetery. The black folks got buried in the back of the cemetery, white folks up front, and there was usually a fence separating the 2 cemeteries. And that's what I think was the way in which the Sumner Cemetery was established. So we've gotten into this, so we might as well talk it all the way through. Ray, there were as many black people in Sumner as there were white people. I found that I didn't have to. The Shallow Cemetery is right there, containing the bodies of the white citizens of Sumner. But I didn't really realize or appreciate where the black citizens of Sumner. I guess I assumed they were in Rosewood. I didn't really think about that much. But once I saw that photograph that said that these black victims of the Rosewood Massacre being buried in Sumner, 2 miles from Rosewood, with white folks standing around, why was that? The reason for that, Ray, was that one of the white men, or 2 white men, were killed by Sylvester Carrier, the Rosewood, the black man who was the hero of Rosewood.
I read about that.
Killed 2 white men. One of them was named Polly Wilkerson. He was kind of the quarters boss, boots they call it, for the black folks. He got the black folks in Sumner, who worked in the sawmill in place. But Polly Wilkerson was one of the 2 white men who approached the Carrier house, Sylvester Carrier, being the black man was protecting his house and his family, and they killed his mother. And when his mother was killed, and these men came up onto the porch, Sylvester shot him dead. So Polly Wilkerson was from that area, and he was buried in Shallow Cemetery. I used to go to his grave.
Right.
So here's what was happening, that photograph. That photograph was taken on the Sunday after this whole thing was over.
Okay.
And they were burying people. Polly Wilkerson was buried in that cemetery, in the front part of the cemetery, right inside the gate.
Yeah.
And those white folks who were in that photograph were there for Polly's funeral.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they were dressed up, for Polly's funeral. I think at the same time, later that day, they also went to the back of the cemetery and stood for the burial of the 6 black victims. Now, some white people have trouble understanding that because they think, well, all the white folks in Sumner and that area must have been racist, and why would they be? The white people knew those black people who had been killed. They knew Sarah Carrier, one of the victims.
In their homes.
Exactly. So, and they were decent people in the sense that they wouldn't have left those bodies rotting in Rosewood. They collected the bodies and buried them in a safe cemetery, which was the Shallow Cemetery, 2 miles.
Shallow.
Exactly, exactly, and not in Rosewood, because at that time Rosewood was in flames. Yeah. They would not have taken those bodies to Rosewood to bury them in that cemetery in Rosewood because it would have been dangerous for them to have done that. So anyway, I found this photograph. I really didn't know what was with it, but one day I was at the Polly Wilkes at the grave for the Wrights, which is in Shallow Cemetery. That's where Polly Wilkerson is as well. And I was waiting for a photographer, and who was late. So I started wandering through the white cemetery, and I saw these graves that just grave, no name, grave. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I found the Rosewood victims. But what I had found, Ray, were the sites of the 1918 white victims of the massacre of the pandemic of 1918. Dozens and dozens and dozens of graves with no names, just grave, which made me wonder even more than if these are the white victims of the 1918 pandemic, where are the black victims of the 1918 pandemic? That's what took me to the back of the cemetery, to that fence, into this overgrown wooded area that hadn't been touched in decades, to see if there were any black graves back there.
Yeah.
So I was there one day with my son and wandered through the cemetery, the back of the cemetery, and I found mounds the size of SUVs. I found 3. So I'm wondering, what the heck's in these mounds? I also found graves. Now, in the Shallow Cemetery, they use clamshells. It's very close to the Gulf where they do clamming, so rather than expensive concrete, they mark the graves with shells. That's how I knew where Polly Wilkinson's grave was. It was marked with shells. They moved the shells, so we had more trouble finding Polly. But back in the back part of the cemetery, I find two graves that have shells. So I called the Levy County Sheriff's Office to tell them I found a cemetery in the back of Shiloh. And they said, we'll meet you. They came out the next day, and they were there before I got there. And they said, yeah, we found two more mounds back here. And I said, okay, so what are y'all going to do about it? And they said nothing. They said that unless there are exposed body parts, there's nothing that the Sheriff's Department, Levy County, can do about this. Call the state of Florida. I called the state of Florida. They said it's a private cemetery. Unless the owners of the cemetery agree, you have no access to the cemetery. So I called the owners of the cemetery, told them I wanted to show them what I found in the back of their cemetery. Would they meet me? They agreed. So I drove back up from Miami. So the people there told me not to go back to the river cemetery again, or otherwise I would be arrested. I've been back with my Teach the Truth tours.
And what is a Teach the Truth tour? Don't go off script for me, but tell me what it is.
My nonprofit, the Miami Center for Racial Justice, has a grant from the Mellon Foundation over 3 years to take college students to sites in Florida where racial violence took place. Mm-hmm. And that grant is being extended to go into similar sites in Alabama and Mississippi. Mm-hmm. And this is year 2 of that grant. So
okay.
I've taken people to Rosewood and other sites in Florida where these kinds of things have happened for the last 2 years. So these are called Teach the Truth tours. We pay all the expenses. Mm-hmm. These are overnight tours, and I have led most of them. You've been on a couple with us as well.
Give our guests just 3 or 4 locations that we take people to on your tours, other than Rosewood.
Sure, Newberry. Okay. Newberry is also close to Gainesville. Newberry is the site of the largest known lynching in Florida history. 1916, they lynched about 8 people at one time. Okay. Well, over the course of 2 or 3 days.
Okay.
So we go to Newberry. We also go on some of the tours all the way up to Live Oak, which is where in 1944, 15-year-old Willie James Howard, a black boy, 8th grade, was lynched for writing a love letter to a white girl. So we got to the Swanee River, where he was forced to jump into that river with his hands and feet tied by the father of the girl that he had written this letter to. So Live Oak.
Ocoee? What's
Ocoee?
About Ocoee?
Yeah, Ocoee, close to Orlando, about 14 miles west of Orlando, where in 1920, Julius Perry was his name, a black man, was lynched for trying to vote. We go to his grave. We go to the section of Ocoee that was the black section that was burned down by a mob. We don't know how many people died in that attack in 1920, but we also go out to the mass grave where many of the victims were buried from the Rosewood Massacre.
What about Mims? What happened there?
We've only been there once or twice. That museum, this is in Brevard County. This is where Harry T. Moore and his wife were killed in 1951 by a bomb placed beneath their house by the Klan, we suspect. Mm-hmm. But that museum is not open on the weekends. And our tours are almost always on weekends, so we've only been there once or twice.
What's all about the Miami tour? You started another tour. What is that all about?
Black
Miami tour.
Yeah, I take folks on tours of historical sites in Black Miami, Coconut Grove, Lemon City, Little Haiti now, Liberty City, of course, and the purpose of that, Ray, is to have people who live here who know very little about Miami history walk the ground where Black history was made. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the places that were and are important are being lost through gentrification and redevelopment. So the Black Miami tours are for local folks. We've done them to various organizations. This is not a part of the Mellon Foundation. This is something I do through my own company, Dunn Tours.
Okay.
And we're ready to offer private tours. Right now, we're not doing it.
Okay.
Later this summer. I have a new book, y'all.
Tell us about it.
This book just came out last month. It is for middle school students in Florida, not just Black students. and it's called The History of African Americans in Florida. And I wrote this book because of what's going on in the state of Florida to suppress Black history. And this book contains stories, individuals that they will not find in other history books that are available to students in Florida.
And you told me that civic organizations, fraternal sorority organizations, churches can all purchase this book and use this book for the purpose of educating not just Black children, but children, period, about the Black experience in Florida's history.
At ccipub.com.
Say that again?
ccipub.com for this book.
Okay. Well, with that, we thank you for all of the information and for another informative video. That's a wrap.